Hello and welcome to another session of painting on my Librarian's backpack. I've been looking at this again under the cold light of day, and I've decided that even though the tone looks okay, I'm going to give the glaze a shot. And the thing is, the glaze is such a thin coat of paint that if I decide I don't like it, I can always reapply the highlight, and there's nothing lost. So for this, you can do a glaze with just water. I like to use the specific glaze medium. And let me show you how I mix it up. I'm going to see if I can put my palette into frame here. And pick up a brush. This one will do. So here we see I have a drop of the glaze medium, and here I have some Imperial Blue. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just very carefully dip the tip of my brush in here and sort of swirl that into the medium. And you get this really, really thin. It looks lighter than it actually is. I think actually I want to get a little bit more like so. There. We have a good tone. And this is, as you see, it looks really watery. It doesn't cover much at all. In fact, I'm going to get some of the water out of my brush and start applying this and show you what it looks like. And hopefully it's in focus this time. Stupid camera. Anyway. This is just a slight tinting the surface. It's not a huge deal at all. It's just bringing it back down a little bit, unifying the colors. And yeah, hopefully this will turn out all right. While I'm doing this, I feel I should comment on something I commented on last video. I made a remark about edge highlighting that might have been construed as disparaging, like I thought it was a bad technique. No, of course not. I mean, it has its place. And, well, specifically, there are occasions when edge highlighting is actually the realistic thing to do. I mean, certain edges on a miniature would catch light and reflect more light, and they should, of course, be highlighted. What I was referring to was the sort of GW standard technique of highlighting every single edge on a mini, whether it would actually reflect light or not in real life. And this is a very stylized approach, and as opposed to realistic, and that's perfectly fine if what you're going for is readability on a gaming table, because that sort of highlighting makes the miniatures more distinct from each other. They make the parts of the miniature more distinct from each other and allows you to see detail more clearly at a distance. So that's a perfectly legitimate technique in that occasion. However, when doing a display piece, I feel it more appropriate to use a more semi-realistic highlighting scheme. And this is what this is going to be, after all, a display piece. Now, the glaze will take a while to dry, so I will pause until then. Okay, now the glaze is dried, and you probably can't see a huge difference on camera. It's very subtle, but I like it. You will also note that I've base coated the skull here in this color here, Zandri Dust. You can see some blue showing through because I've done a very thin coat, because this skull, the sculpting is kind of subtle. You know, the details could easily get lost if you put on too thick of a coat of paint. I've also changed the angle here of the camera. I've pulled it down closer so that hopefully the autofocus will pick up the miniature instead of the crap in the background. Now, the next step is to give the skull a little wash. Now, a lot of people use a dark brown wash for bone, like Agrax Earthshade. And that provides a lot of contrast, but it's not... if you want a natural bone look, you should have a brown with a little bit of red in it. Now, you might counter that this is not natural bone. This is just obviously a paint-on symbol. But I'm saying they painted it to look like natural bone. So for this, I'm using this stuff here, chestnut ink wash from Coat to Arms. And I'm just going to pick up a tiny amount and go to the model and simply apply it. All I really want is to get into the eye sockets and between the teeth. And I'm going to have to pause after this, not because I need to wait for it to dry, but I'm noticing a low battery indicator on my camera. So, yeah, that happened. Okay, so technology forces me to take a break. When we come back, I will start working on the metallics. See you then. And we're back. And now with the skull a darker shade of brown, especially in the crevices. And I've also, in the meantime, while I was waiting for the recharge, taken the liberty of base coating the metallic areas. And I've used a color called gunmetal. I can show you. This is the triad of game color silver metallics, the gunmetal, chainmail, and silver. And I started with the gunmetal. And you'll notice that I'm doing this in a slightly different style. If you compare the backpack on this guy, you see that these, you'll note which parts are the armor color, which are metallic. I've seen both these styles used for Space Marines. I've painted most of the ones I've done previously this way. This seems to be the more common way. But I've started to come around to the way of thinking that this way is more interesting. So, but let's try to put on some highlights. I'm going to pick up the chainmail and this is not going to be a big highlight. I mean, these areas are not of primary importance. I'm putting highlights on the top here and a little bit on the bottom lip here where light, no, well, not much light go there, but if somebody were to shine a light, that's where the light would catch. And maybe a little in here. I'm gonna put a wash here anyway. Oops, I had too much water. Drop of water on the side of the brush there. That's something you need to watch out for. I'm using a different brush now, by the way. As I mentioned before, I have a different set of brushes that I use for metallics. So you don't mix, you don't risk mixing metallic paint with ordinary paint, because that's bad news. And yeah, this is actually a Citadel brush, fine detail. I bought a whole bunch of Citadel brushes, the fine detail, the detail, and the standard for use with metallics. For some reason, the other two just disintegrated very rapidly when I started using them for metallics. This one, though, has kept its point. The other ones very quickly became splayed out and useless for anything except covering very large areas. Let's move on to the silver, and this will just be very few dots of silver here. It looks like I have a huge glob of paint on the brush, I know, but yeah, let's take that off. Oops, can't see what I'm doing. Just on the corner there. And I'm going to use the silver just to touch these rivets, the tops of these rivets. Very gently. And I went over there. Basically, that's it. I'm going to... I made a slight mistake there. I'm going to have to clean this up. I'm going to have to put some blue around there. And around there. Yeah. That's good. And I know the silver is drying very quickly on my palette. Here's the thing. Metallic paints don't care if you put them on a wet palette. They will dry out anyway. Because there's, well, I suppose there's a chemical reason for it. I'm not sure exactly what. But it's really difficult to paint these grills inside the vents carefully, so I'm going to have to give them a slight wash. And I actually have a little bit of Nuln oil left in this pot. Not a whole lot, but let's see if we can use what there is. And I'll probably end for today after this, because I'm running long again on this video. That was a bit watery. It's not. Yeah, that's not going to work. I'm going to have to go for a more substantial. The Nuln oil is very thin. This stuff, the equivalent from Coat d'Arms, Superwash Black, has a thicker consistency. It's heavier bodied. It will flow into the cracks and crevices more easily. And for example, if I put it in here, that will help delineate the grills in a much clearer fashion. And oh, that's too much. I have to pick that up. Yeah. And there. And there. Like that. And let's see. Yeah, that should do it. Anyway, Turns out I will have time to film and paint tomorrow as well, so I think I'll just save finishing up the skull and doing the varnishes until tomorrow and stop here for today. So, with a final look at the backpack as far as it's gotten, this is Dakian signing off.